Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Monday, February 1st, 2021. This is the Town of Halifax Finance Committee meeting. We're being recorded on Zoom, through which we're having our meeting tonight. On tonight's agenda, acceptance of minutes, budgets. At 6:15, the Board of Health budgets. At 6:30, the library budgets. Reserve fund transfers, correspondence, public education, calendar, and as may arise. So let's get some of the housekeeping handled. First up, we have acceptance of minutes. And thank you very much, as always, Linda, for doing the meeting minutes for us. We have, I believe, just the one set from January 25th, 2021. Is that right, Linda?
That's correct.
All right, so we're all caught up except for that one. So that was Monday, January 25th, 2021. Members present were Cheryl Zarella-Burke, Fred McGovern, Melinda Tarsi, Tom Connolly, and Lauren Carmichael. So just as a reminder, only the folks who are there are able to vote either yay or nay on the acceptance of minutes, and those who are not there are invited to vote in an abstention. I would entertain a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend the meeting minutes for Monday, January 25th, 2021 as printed.
I make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or edits? All right, great. All those in favor, I'll roll call. Cheryl?
Aye.
Drew?
He wasn't
I
there.
was not at the meeting.
Okay. So would you like us to record you as an abstention?
Yes.
Okay. So Cheryl is aye. Drew abstains. Tom?
Aye.
Okay, and myself, Melinda, aye. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Linda, for doing those for us. All right. Next up, we have budgets. So are there any just sort of general updates from Sandy or Charlie before we dive into specific departments?
No, there's been no change since the last meeting. I've got no additional budgets in, so.
Okay.
The only thing on the, just in terms of the revenue side, the governor's budget, if you look at the Silver Lake numbers, they're misleading.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, they're not helpful even when they're not misleading. I don't mean that the Silver Lake is misleading. I mean, it's not helpful to us, but there's a zero for the regional transportation number when we should be getting several $100,000. That's because, according to Division of Local Services, that the necessary information wasn't sent to DESE, the Division or Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So that's why there's a zero there. It does not mean we will get zero, or at least Silver Lake will get zero for regional transport. But even if they get the same amount that they did last year, the amount is down a couple $100,000 after netting all the charter school stuff. So, I mean, we went through this a little bit last year, but now this year is even more so, is that any increase in the Silver Lake budget will be on the backs of the three communities. Not only that, but even just getting back to even for this coming year, for fiscal 22, will be on the backs of the communities. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Obviously, we don't have a budget from Silver Lake yet. I think, in fact, and so we don't know what the actual numbers are going to look like, but it's going to be interesting. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, folks. I noticed too that we all should have received some updates from Mass Municipal Association concerning the latest projected numbers on local aid. And if folks aren't receiving those emails, let me know and we can make sure that you get on the email list so that you get those kind of updates and news bulletins and things like that. A lot of you probably are getting them just from being registered through the ATFC, Association of Town Finance Committees, but there's also other email lists that you can join and receive updated information as it comes out during the budget process as well.
And then maybe we could talk after. I need to make sure I think I'm off some of those and I shouldn't be.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'll make sure that we can touch base after. I can also, if you want to send me an email too, I can make sure that we get your emails put in. It might be your old email, whatever we registered for like the ATFC with, it might still be going to those, but we can make sure we get everybody on their Town of Halifax emails.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So 6:15 Board of Health budgets. Are all the anticipated members here that would like to speak to the Finance Committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So Finance Committee, just as a reminder, if you open up your Town of Halifax email through Office 365, in the upper left-hand corner, you will see what my students call the waffle, those 9 or 12 or whatever boxes up in the top left. If you click there and go to OneDrive, and then off to the left, shared, you'll be able to see all of the budgets that Sandy has helpfully uploaded into that folder. So we'll start off with health, about halfway down the page. All right, and those folks who are here from the Board of Health, would you like to introduce yourself to the committee?
Hi, Alan Diaz, co-chairman, Board of Health.
And Bob Valerie, the health agent.
Great. Hi, Alan. Hi, Bob. Thanks for joining us. I'll let the Finance Committee members, we have a bunch of new folks and new faces. So if we just want to go through and we can go kind of in the order on the screen if that works for everyone and just introduce ourselves. So I'm Melinda Tarsi. I'm the committee chair.
I'm Cheryl Zarella Burke.
Tom Connolly.
Drew McClincy.
Fred McGovern.
Awesome. All right. So from the, so Alan, Anna, or Bob, whoever would like to go first, if there's a particular place you want to direct our attention, just let us know. We'll make sure that we can open that file and all get on the same page.
Bob, did you want to start? I don't have that. I don't have the ability to go to that Outlook, so I have some papers with me. So you have to just bear with me. I wanted to speak mainly on the health agent's position. I don't know if we can start there or if there's other areas. I think everything else, we pretty much level funded.
Okay.
In the budget. Am I correct, Bob?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
All the assistant money is level funded. The VNA is level funded. All the consulting, the work for the landfill, everything else is level funded.
Okay. So I kind of wanted to address the health agent's position and possibly ask the Finance Committee for a clothing allowance. I believe the health agent is currently at a grade 11, step 1. And what my board would like is to have him increased from a grade 11, step 3. One of the reasonings is that as you know, Bob is new. When we hired him in this position, he ended up with the lowest grade level, which to me really wasn't fair. I didn't negotiate the salary with him, but when you look at that sort of grade level with the amount of experience, going back with agents over the years, typically we hired agents and they pretty much got on the job training. In this particular case, we get someone that's fully trained. So that was kind of an issue that hopefully we can address through this process. The other thing that we were looking for, and a letter that went out to the Selectman's office on January 11th, is requesting a clothing allowance of $300. I didn't realize that amount had got put in. I personally think that's a little low based on the fact that the health agent's going to be looking at coats, boots, some sort of outerwear during this time of the year. The agent and I went on an inspection the other day to a site that had some very smelly material. And I still haven't put my boots back on. And I think Bob had to go home and he had to work through the rest of the day and stay out of the Board of Health office. So $300 for shoes and coats and sweaters, to me, doesn't really seem enough. So I don't know if you want to start on the grade 11, step 3. I just want to point out one thing, that even though we're asking for this step, which is a little premature in the level. I still think that we're going to be well under our budget. I think the health agent that retired was somewhere around 72,000. And the current position is paying 68,000 and some change. So we're about $9,500 less. So I don't know in the big picture if that's in the budget, because I can't see it. But our budget, even if it was level funded, we're still, this year, we're going to be a heck of a lot under what we were last year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alan. So do you want to why don't we start with the grade change, the step increase discussion first? If no one minds, do you mind if I just ask a procedural question, Charlie, just because we haven't handled this yet as a full, as not a wage and personnel? I know from the finance committee perspective, we always just looked at whether or not it fit in the budget, but now that we're kind of in both of those worlds, I guess procedurally, what do you think makes the most sense? Should we discuss the legitimacy of the increase and then discuss the budgetary impacts, or do you think that we are able to just talk about it holistically, given that we're in charge?
Because one leads to the other. I don't know yeah.
Okay. So just for the committee members who maybe weren't here last year, prior to the disbanding of wage and personnel, the finance committee would have been presented with requests like these to increase steps, for example, which would increase compensation for that selected position. And the finance committee only ever looked at it from the budget perspective, whether or not the department and the town overall could afford that. Now that wage and personnel has been disbanded and is under the purview of both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, we're now thinking not only about whether or not it fits in the budget, but also whether or not it's a legitimate request from a personnel management perspective, right? So if you want to separate those two conversations, that's fine. Or if we want to discuss it together, that's fine. I'll start off with, does anyone from the committee have any questions for any of the folks from the Board of Health concerning this proposed step increase from 11.1 to 11.3?
Alan, just if I could, this is Tom, just to clarify, looking at the January 11th note to the Selectman's office and to us, this basically you're contemplating two phases, right? That we do a step 3 now and we'll do a step 4 in 6 months?
Yes, that is the proposal.
Okay. So just so everyone on the committee's kind of clear, we're looking to do 2. And then, Linda, I'm not sure the tradition, and maybe no one on this committee understands the tradition with steps versus grades. I know we have some job reevaluation requests that we're looking at much lower grades, 6, 7s, and 8s. But I don't know what the tradition is with step increases. Maybe if Charlie, if you could give us history on that, whether those tend to be automatic and sacrosanct, or whether we can exercise judgment here.
Oh. The automatics are not automatic. What has to happen according to the bylaw is the department head has to find that the person and so on that anniversary date of the job hire, that person moves to the next step. Obviously, at some point they run into step 6 and the step increases stop. However, there is room for now by the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen to agree to a step increase. It's not necessarily based on evaluation in the sense of this larger jump in the bylaws, so that if both the Finance Committee and the Selectmen agreed, and there's sufficient money in the budget to do it, in the sense of if I'm making all these numbers up, let's say the current wage rate was $20,000. Obviously it isn't. And there's only 22 in the budget. The Finance Committee and the Selectmen could say, fine, sure, we'll bring it to a step that's at 25,000, but it won't be effective until money's in the budget, which means it will have to wait until town meeting. In this case, Sandy would have a better handle than I would. But the budget for the year we're in now, I'm not sure it includes all the way to sufficient money. Sandy would know that if the budget went in, and I suspect it did with a step 6, because I think at the time the budget was being prepared, we weren't sure whether Kathy was going to be leaving or not, or when she'd be leaving. But there,
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me interject here. So unfortunately, no, the budget went in at a step one.
okay,
So because of the delay in the town meeting and because of the fact we were looking for money wherever we could find it, we did put that budget in at a grade 11, step one, which is the 68,478. And that, Ellen, you're right, it went down substantially from Kathy, when she was leaving, was making 87,441. That's what was budgeted for FY 20. And then, so then it went down to 68. If he went up to a step three, that would be $72,035. That's step three. So there is not money in the budget at this point to put him up to a step three. But as Charlie said, we could go to try to increase the budget at the special town meeting to get more money in it. Or you could wait until July 1st and try to jump them the steps there. Step 4 is 73,879. So Kathy had been making longevity too, so that's why hers was so high. Actually, and a vacation payoff. So the year before
so
she
that was
was
her
at
final-
70.
Sandy, that was
Pardon me?
that was her final year pay because she had.
That was her final year pay.
She had a vacation-
Yeah, so
vacation
there was
payoff.
some
What was her-
vacation payoff in there.
Okay.
But-
What was her core base without longevity?
So, yeah. I don't have that separately, but
Okay.
I would say I think it was around 70. I'm trying to think what I make. Wait a minute. I can tell you that. Hang on.
Sandy, I think it was around 70,259. That was the actual, well, that was at least one of my sheets.
That's without longevity, probably, Alan.
And then
Yeah.
longevity kicked
So
it.
80,000 with longevity. She was making, Linda, do you remember? I think it was about 78. Yeah, so I think she was making around 78. So
Right. That would be the
I
step
think that's what
6
step 6
Okay.
is.
78,47.
in grade 11.
Did you have that figure, Bob? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
78,047, I believe.
Is
Yes.
grade 6? Yeah.
Step 6, grade 11.
Yeah.
So
So,
at the time that I was hired, Finance Committee wasn't available to even meet, to even discuss where the starting wage was going to be. So, I mean, I got hired on July 1st. So, however the budget got approved at the 68 whatever, one wasn't a negotiable term, but it was also obviously loaded in at somebody that they may have expected not have experience, or why a budget would be loaded at somebody with 68,000 in a health position in a pandemic situation. It's a little bit surprising.
one of the other things that Wage and Personnel and the Finance Committee have traditionally, and this all, of course, depends on the membership, so I'm only speaking for myself as having been a member of both, is to, with the understanding that when department heads post for jobs, they're posting usually at that grade step 1, grade X step 1. And the understanding is that if they find candidates whose qualifications exceed the minimum qualifications and who seem a better fit for a higher grade, they will bring that position and that person's experience to what was Wage and Personnel and the Finance Committee, and ask if accounting for the budget and if assuming the money is there for it, if they can lift that person or that position to compensation at a higher step to account for the fact that this person is walking in with more experience than what a step 1 would compensate.
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking Charlie, because I'll just speak for myself from a personnel standpoint. I would prefer to defer to the department the board, et cetera, on what they feel comfortable compensating the person occupying that position, given that person's experience, given that they've conducted an exhaustive hiring process, et cetera, right? So that's the personnel side. From the finance side, right, my only concern is whether or not we're able to cover it in this current fiscal year. I would not be opposed to go to a special. I think that just given the climate, it might be an easier, from the Board of Health's perspective, to make the argument. I think it might be an easier sell at an annual, but I would not be opposed to bringing it to a special. But that's just me as one member. I'm happy to hear from anybody else on the committee who has either questions or sort of where they're leaning on this.
Well, and if I can, or Charlie, could I ask a history question? Back in July, when the call was made not to have that conversation about Bob being more qualified than a step one traditionally would be. I mean, it's logical. When you're out to search, you bring it in at the lowest step, and then if you find someone who's stronger. Was wage and personnel functional at that time, or had it transferred to finance, or did that conversation fall through the cracks?
Melinda, if I may.
Yeah.
Tom, I think the Board of Health should probably take the heat for this. We weren't really aware of that. We were sort of in the middle of the pandemic.
A little busy, yeah.
And, you know, we interviewed 7 or 8 people for the position. I personally did not know that we could have gone to wage and personnel to renegotiate the terms of the agreement. I let my chairman, John Weber, he handled the negotiations with Bob. And I'm going to say that probably John didn't realize, or we weren't aware that we had that ability. And we really had no guidance.
Yeah, and that too would have been right at the time that wage and personnel no longer existed. So what we're finding is that with any organizational change, we're figuring things out as we go, which is why I asked the procedural question of Charlie in the beginning, because always it was having to wear 2 different hats depending on which committee we were on at any given time, right? But I think it makes a lot more sense now to have this conversation, like I mentioned, holistically, and think about, okay, how do we feel about the idea of this increase? So like I've made my position clear as to, you know, I'm happy to defer to the board and what they feel is the correct rate to compensate this person at. And then whether or not we can fund it, and sort of when, as Charlie mentioned, would be the best time to make that request of the town. From the health side of things, from the health department folks, do you have a perspective one way or another in terms of going for a special meeting, going for the special to try to ask for this, or to increase the current fiscal year budget to attempt to do this step increase now? Or do you have a preference to hold off and try to do an increase to a step 4 at the annual town meeting, seeing as that's the kind of ultimate goal, is to be able to lift it to a 4?
I guess with the special, if we opted to go with the special, you need to have the funds available. And it looks like that we're going to be fairly thin on funds. And I think in the past, trying to get wage increases during specials has been a little bit of a problem, if my memory is correct. Mm-hmm. So I guess I think we'd probably be better off going to the annual and try it there. Would you agree, Charlie? Sandy?
I would. Well, it's also, you know, we're talking a month and a half between May 10th and June 30th. I think it's an awkward place to do it at the special on May 10th instead of the annual. You know, the amount of money isn't a lot. We're talking obviously low 4 figures between step 1 and step 4. So it can be, or step 3, sorry. And then if we're doing step 4 on July 1st, it's just.
Charlie, may I ask a question? Yeah. Is this something that, besides the money, would would it have, if there was enough money in the budget, would this have to go to town meeting?
No, if there was enough money, it should be just the finance committee and the board of selectmen making the decision.
Okay.
I mean, ultimate, I'll have to go check the bylaw at this point, to see what the specific procedure for, as mentioned, as you all discussed, usually what happens is that when the person's coming in initially, that's when any bump is going to happen. Not in the middle of, not say particular year, but either they start at some step other than step one and they move up. Or they start at step one and they move up. I think it's been very rare that we've had people start, let's say, step one, and then at some point there's been a jump to, let's say, step three, step four, whatever, and then they continue on with a step a year as long as they have satisfactory evaluations. But I can check.
I think we just did one last year, right, Charlie, for one of the COA positions. We basically right fitted the step to the experience of the person in the position. I don't remember what position it was.
Van driver, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right.
That's how I thought I read it in the bylaw. I didn't just dream it up for myself. So when I read the bylaw, it seemed like, yes, it could happen midstream. And that's why I suggested the possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think that's what we did was it had to be posted for hire at that level. We basically asked if the COA was comfortable with an elevated step. I think it was like from a 1 to a 3 or something like that. It was definitely more than one step increase. And we were trying to ensure that the person's qualifications were being accounted for in their compensation. And that's why I asked, because I think it went through, I think Finance Committee just asked if there was the money, and there was, so that was a sign off. And I think from the wage and personnel side, we just basically asked if they were sure that this, it matched the qualification levels. And again, that's what my bent is, that sort of like deference to the department head in knowing they're hiring.
And the step difference here, I mean, we'd be at a step 2 anyway in July, so it's a 2 to 4 move that we'd be asking for if we waited till town meeting, right?
That's correct. And as Charlie mentioned, we wouldn't have to ask the town to appropriate. I mean, we ask in that, they're going to have to approve all of Article 4, which is all of the operating budget.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have to ask for any kind of special funding for the position if we went for a 4 at the annual.
That's a lot easier to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I think, frankly, too, and just like because we're in a pandemic, I mean, I think if it weren't odd or not the norm to ask for salary increases in a special, I don't think there'd be a lot of resistance given the current political and economic climate, obviously what we're going through. I think, though, there is that tendency to have those kind of wage requests that come through at the special to receive a lot of extra attention and critique. That's just my view on it. I don't know how anybody else feels.
How many people are in your board of, what is it that says that health of that? What item? What's
Drew, you're breaking up. Maybe turn your camera off.
Yeah, if you want, Drew, you could type in the chat and I can ask the question for you too, if that's easier.
Never mind.
If you were asking how many people are in the Board of Health, there are 3 board members, but then we have the health inspector, and he has an administrative assistant and a clerk that work in his office.
I see.
Who's the health inspector?
That's Bob. He's the health inspector.
Okay,
Right.
he's the health agent. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, health agent,
yes.
health inspector.
Still responsible for the entire job, and COVID was another
Responsible
whole
for everything.
situation laid on to us, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alan, do you have a preference here? I mean, talking about this 7-week gap really between, going hard and going easy.
Yeah, to me, I think we need to go easy with this one. I think we're better off in the annual, as long as the funds, I guess, can be allocated. I guess, Sandy, is there a possibility?
Basically, what we'll do, we'll just raise your budget to the step 4 position, which is 73,879. Now, on town meeting floor, that could be held because it's a large jump, but a lot of times they don't even hold it. And there's a good reason behind it, because we have gotten a more qualified person. And, we brought him in at step 1, but the work that he's been doing and, because of all his experience.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I think we're better off at the annual.
So here's the question, Sandy, then can we just fold in, because the uniform allowance would go under the expense line, or does the uniform allowance have its own separate line?
Usually the uniform allowance goes under the expense line.
Okay.
So we would also increase their expense budget by whatever the uniform allowance. Truthfully, let's see. So your expense line is at 7,873. Last year was an unusual year. We sort of stopped everything because of the pandemic. So you only spent 3,698. But the year before that, you spent just over 5,000. About 5,250. You may have room in your expense budget for those uniforms.
Sandy,
for this year?
Pardon me?
For this year?
I don't know where you are. I don't have the budget status in front of me, so I don't know how much you've spent this year. But I can do some research into that.
Okay, could you do that, please? Now,
right. The last couple of years you've had extra in your expense budget. You would have been able to afford the uniforms within that.
Okay, can the board itself make that determination on a clothing allowance, or is that something that selectmen need to make, or town meeting approval? I don't know which other departments. I imagine highway gets some sort of clothing allowance, and I don't know what other departments get.
Right. So the clothing allowance, with basically most clothing allowances are being rolled into either they get it at the beginning of the year and they can spend it and then claim it on their taxes, or it gets rolled into their paycheck. But I believe that in the past, with the past health agent, there were times that she bought pieces of clothing using the expense budget. And I know that this happens in other departments where people don't actually have clothing allowances, but they are allowed to purchase special boots or something on that idea under their expense account.
Okay. All right. So my board should take whatever appropriate action to see what we have in the budget. And then by a vote of the board, it sounds like that
you can approve expenses, right?
Okay.
Reimburse. Yeah.
So I have a question. So then might the easiest thing be then for Alan and the board to just rework the budget, rework the budget for FY22, account for a step 4, account for an increase in uniform, and then bring that back to the finance committee for us to go back and do the typical kind of approval process?
Absolutely. And I'll be glad to work with them on that.
Perhaps tonight we can take a vote as a board on the idea of the increase from sort of the wage and personnel perspective, and just understand that the financial discussion, we're going to punt a little bit until we see a reviewed budget, but at least then we'll be kind of performing our duties as half of the new acting wage and personnel entity. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Then
can I just interject for a second?
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that I'm recording this right. So even if you guys are voting this, though, this would still need to go before the Board of Selectmen as well, as part of the wage and personnel. And just a cautionary note, I don't know, it's certainly been handled different ways, and I'm not going to step in and say which way it has to go, but from the position of assistant treasurer, you need to consider that uniform allowance carefully, how it's paid out, because technically
Excellent.
anything that, unless the clothing or whatever it is specifically says town of Halifax and is left, like say it's even a pair of boots. If you don't leave the boots at the town of Halifax, then it's supposed to be considered as part of your income and it should be going in under their payroll so that they're taxed on it. Otherwise, there are, for sure, it has been handled in the past other ways, but I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that.
Yeah.
That it should either be as income or out of the expense, but then there's certain ways if you pay it out of expense that it should be being handled. But that's somebody else to figure out.
No, that's absolutely right. That's how it was in Marshfield.
Yeah.
You either came under income or you had to file it. Like if you got a logo on your shirt, then it was technically town property. So
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Even though it's considered part of your income, it can be paid out of your expense account, though.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it hits your W-2, Sandy.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion for the finance committee to recommend the step change from a grade 11 step 1 to a grade 11 step 4 for the health agent position effective for the fiscal year 2022.
Can you say step 2 to step 4? Because he will be on step 2 as of July 1st anyways.
Thank you. All right.
Yep.
So I would entertain a motion for the finance committee to recommend the movement of the health agent from a grade 11 step 2 to a grade 11 step 4 effective for the FY 2022 fiscal year.
So I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, I will roll call us. Cheryl?
Aye.
Drew?
Abstain.
Tom?
Aye.
Fred?
aye.
And myself, Melinda, aye. Okay. So that part of the sort of wage and personnel stuff has been handled. We will handle the budget discussion when we see a revised FY22 budget from Board of Health when they submit that.
And when obviously Charlie isn't on the call anymore, but so I will send that note to Charlie because I don't know how with this whole new system. I'll send that you guys voted on that so that the Board of Selectmen know, and then they can weigh in, and then the overall decision gets made.
Perfect. Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Anything else from Health?
Hey, it was nice, just nice to meet you guys. Sorry you can't do it in person.
No, it's great to meet you, and thank you so much.
Nice to meet you too. Wow.
We're really, really appreciative.
Hey, we're in this together,
Definitely. All right. Well, you're obviously welcome to stay. I would never kick you off a finance committee meeting, but if you have other things to do, I will not take it personally, and neither will the rest of the board. So thanks very much, Bob and Alan, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we're not running too far behind. Next up on the agenda, we do have the library budgets. So I believe, Jean, I know you are here. Thank you.
I am here. Yep. Hello.
Thank you. So again, finance committee members, we can pull the, or you can navigate to the folder for the library budget in your OneDrive shared file from Sandy. All right, and Jean, if there's a particular file or something like that you want us to open up, just give us a yell, and we'll make sure we all get there at the same time.
Okay. I think the easiest way to look at the budget, and I know the library budget, is a little different, and I'm not sure. I did meet with Drew on a very cold Saturday afternoon. And Drew, I don't know if you kind of explained the library budget to the board, or if I should be doing that tonight to the new people.
I watched on Area 58, the meeting, the finance committee had last week. I haven't met with anybody else since then. I went back and read up on the stuff you explained to me, so I actually understood it. I looked at the cherry sheet and read up on the statement you're getting, the 1,000 or whatever it is. The statement of you in the library.
Okay, I didn't understand much of that. You were kind of breaking up a lot.
Dean, it would
I read
probably
up on the
help-
TAMI stuff you explained to me,
Okay,
and then I went back and checked on the state grants that you mentioned, like how the library budget every 3 years goes up 2.5%, whatever it is.
Yep.
So I get the state money, so I checked on the cherry sheet to get the state, what the state money was.
Understand.
Like what Melinda was talking about, the emails that go out. I checked
Yep.
on that just so I understand a lot better.
So Jean,
good.
Jean, just quickly, we haven't gotten in depth on any department's budget really.
Okay.
So if you want to present or highlight things, and then that way Drew can tag in too, since you've had a conversation. You're our first department heads we've been able to have in to meetings. So we're
Okay.
all putting this together for the first time.
Okay, so I usually submit, along with the budget sheets, I submit something, I don't know if everybody can see this, but it's just called the library proposal, I suppose. And so if you want to bring that up, you can, and I'll just quickly go over the library budget for Tom, and is it Cheryl?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're probably new to that, and I'm not sure if you understand how the library budget works. So the library budget's made up of three things: the wages, the salary, and basically the total operating expenses. And you'll see that on line 36, on line 6, and on line 7. There's a state requirement in order for the library to remain certified. Big thing about being certified is if you are not certified, then you do not get your state aid. And I generally get about $11,000 a year in state aid for being certified. The other part of being a decertified library is that you get that reciprocal borrowing. So as a resident of Halifax, if Halifax is a decertified library because the town did not appropriate the appropriate amount of money, then you wouldn't be able to walk into the Pembroke Library and use your library card. So that's kind of a big thing, because now you have access to basically every library in the state you can walk into and get a library card. Ebooks, and now the ebook collection is statewide too. So that's a big thing too, as far as being certified. So to be certified, if you look on the right-hand side of this, you have to take your last 3 years, the total appropriated municipal income, exactly what the town gave me for wages and salaries and total expenses. You add that up, you divide by 3, and then it has to be increased by 2.5%. So every year, according to the Mass Board of Library Commissions, you have to increase my budget, an average of 3 years plus 2.5%. And that's called the requirement. That's what the town is required to appropriate to the library. The TAMI is different. The TAMI is usually higher than the MAR, just by, you try to stay as close as you can to that. But the TAMI is the total appropriated municipal income, and you have to use the higher number, the TAMI or the requirement, whatever whatever my TAMI is, that's what I have to use, because it's higher than my requirement. Huh? So basically, that's the library budget in a nutshell. I figured out my wages, I figured out my salary, and I figured out my expenses. And then I add that together. For the last few years, I don't know, it's been a lot of years, Sandy, right? That the library has had a gap between that requirement and between the TAMI and the requirement, because probably 5 or 6 years ago, we had a huge decrease in wages because we had like 3 people go from a step 6 to a step 1. And we started out with like a $15,000 gap to meet that increase. And the town has always understood the importance of being certified. They've always been very generous with the library in putting that in that money just has to be appropriated. So for all of those years, the town has been very great to just appropriate that money. And I put it in a line item and we call it extra funds. And sometimes, like one time I spent it on a parking lot issue, and sometimes it just sits in my budget. It just has to be appropriated. I don't have to spend it to stay certified. So this year, we finally kind of almost caught up in that now this next year for fiscal 21, I'm going to have, I think it's 4 employees, including myself, at a step 6. So you'll notice that gap is only $500. My requirement is $335,954, and my request is $336,000. Any questions?
Jean, thanks so much for doing this and for breaking this out. I just have a couple of just like clarifications on some of the expenses, just so that we can have on record what some of the changes from last year were.
Okay.
While I'm pulling those up, if anyone else has questions about the accreditation or the formula that we need to use to ensure that we accredit the library through our funding, feel free to go ahead and ask now. I'll just pull up the expense portion of the budget just to ask a couple questions and get that on record.
Okay. I will say that all of this information is on the Mass Board of Library Commission's website. It's mblc. I believe it's .org. Mm-hmm. And you go under state aid, and then it will give you all of this. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that you can apply for a waiver. So say the town is really short on money and we're not going to meet my requirement. I can go to the board, I can fill out a sheet, and I can submit that and talk to the MBLC. If my cut in the library budget is more than 5%, then I have to fill out a disproportionate cut, and we all have to go in front of the Mass Board of Library Commissions and explain why the library was cut by more than 5% and other budgets weren't. Nobody wants to do that. So the other thing about meeting your requirement is if my requirement is X amount of dollars this year, but the library gives me, X minus $5, when I figure out my requirement for the following year, I have to use that X, not what the town gave me. So you always have to use the highest number to figure out your requirement. So basically, waivers, you're just digging a hole. So did anybody have any questions?
But Jean, if I could just understand, you got wages going up by somewhere around 1%, 1.5%, 2%, say, call it, when you put director and all the clerical salaries together. Mm-hmm. And you're bringing your operating in, except for this 500, you're bringing your operating in flat. I mean, you're at $250 to the good. Is that, just so I understand, that's where you are? Basically, it's a flat budget?
So usually I level fund my expense budget, all except that line item that says extra funds. Yeah. To fill that gap. This year, I don't have really any money in there except for that $500 to meet that gap.
Yeah.
And that's because my wages went up so much. Because I have, 4 employees at step 6 now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jean, I was just going to ask, because I know that you're, like you said, I'm on the expense budget. So I'm in the library budget submission FY22 file, and I'm starting at line like 70, looking at the expense lines. So just to have it on record, two lines in particular. So on line 78, the computer line, previous fiscal years, you had been had more significant requests for the line 78 computer. This year, your request is $500. So I was wondering if you could just speak to that and to line 82 subscriptions, which went up about $2,000 or so. So the computer line 78, and the subscriptions line 82, if you could just speak to those for a minute.
So the computer line and the subscription line, I'm never really sure where to put things, that money that meets the gap, my extra funds, because there's not an extra funds line item on here. So I will just say that the computer line this year of $10,100 is in my budget proposal, and that's the network fees, and that's what I spend every year out of my budget on network fees. It just happens to be in the computer line item, but it's my network fees.
Subscriptions line item.
It's in the subscriptions.
And then the subscription line item is that $500.
No, it's the other way
The
around.
computer, it's the other way around.
The computer is where you
has
put
the
the
500.
Oh, okay. All right. I have it different on my sheet. But so basically that's what it is. Those are kind of interchangeable, and I'm never really quite sure where to put, because my budget proposal is made up of office supplies, phones, electric, all of these different things. And then I try to fit it kind of all into, into this, the budget sheet that Sandy sends me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I could ask the question a different way, then your computers and subscriptions. So let's presume that that's hardware, software, and networking, all of that. Your last year's approval was about $13,000. This year, you're going to do it on 10/6?
I don't have
No, actually, the line item that reads computers has nothing to do with my computers. That usually is part of my capital plan.
Oh, right. Okay.
So the computer, or now under subscriptions, $10,100, that's my network fees that I have to pay to the sales network. This year, my network fees will probably be about $17,000 and then some change. So I split that. I always take out $10,100 out of my budget, and then I use my incentive grant, which is my state aid.
11,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you mean my my network fees are probably going to be about $17,000.
You pay part of it with the grant, which is why it's only 10-1.
Anyone have any other questions? So far, Jean, I think we're doing what we've done in past years, which is starting off by voting on all the level funded requests first, just to sort of see where we are with the upcoming year budget. And then we go through with anything that's an increase, and we talk about that, and we take the vote. So I don't know that we're at the point yet of voting on any increased items, but this certainly sort of counts for.
Well, this isn't really an increase, because most of it comes from, the increase really comes from my wages and my salary. Actually, if you look at my expense line item, my total expenses go down from last year.
Yeah.
Last year, we didn't vote on any wage items, and we voted on everything else. And I would say we should do the same thing. So with regards to the wages, we don't vote on that, but the actual line item that includes all the expenses, since that's actually down, I mean, it's almost the same, but it is a little bit down. I don't see why we don't vote on that right now.
Yeah, no,
It wasn't opposite last year that you voted on all the wages and the salaries, because that's kind of a fixed expense, right? And then,
No.
No, Jean, we held on that because if there were any across the board increases, we waited to see how the budget shook out before. And at that time, we were waiting for wage and personnel to suggest or to recommend
Okay.
whether or not there was an across the board. So we've tended to leave anything wage and personnel or what was wage and personnel until after there had been a recommendation concerning an across the board increase.
okay,
But no, I think to Fred's point, we can definitely take a vote on the expense line tonight because that still fits within our standard. It would actually be a decrease over last fiscal year. So if level funded or decrease, we have tended to vote on immediately. So I would entertain a motion from the Finance Committee to recommend on Article 4, line 127, library expense, the amount of $90,340.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 4, line number 127 in the amount of $90,340.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do you have which line number is this? I'm not looking at it.
Sure.
Well,
So if you're in the library budget submission file, it's titled Article 4, line 127.
All right.
which starts on line 64 in the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further questions? All right, I'll roll call us. So all those in favor, Cheryl,
Aye.
Drew,
Abstain.
Tom,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
and myself, Melinda, aye. So then we'll handle the wages later when we tackle the wage discussion. Jean, do you have anything else for us that you want to point out to us tonight?
nope, that's great.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, if you have any questions or anything pops up, don't hesitate to be in touch.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank
Good night.
you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good night.
All right.
All right, so Linda, do we have any reserve fund transfers moving to the next item on the agenda?
We do not.
Awesome. Any correspondence?
The only thing we had was the letters from the Board of Selectmen accepting Bill's resignation and your resignation.
Okay, thank you. Public participation?
Could I make a comment about the library budget?
Mhm.
One thing that we've done with the library budget is when there is an overall increase or across the board increase for wages, we adjust her wages up, we adjust her expense down, because we're always trying to keep within that required amount.
Yeah.
Because if the town, we're having a good year, we'll just give her the wages and we won't increase her expense, and we won't decrease the expense. That affects future years because we're always going with the average of the last 3 budgets.
Yeah.
So we've always tried to stay within that. They've worked wonderfully with us. The library's been so cooperative when they've had extra money in their budget. They've used it for capital items. Like she said, they used it for a parking lot issue and they've used it for computers. So they are aware too of the sort of the dilemma the town is in, where the library is always getting that 2.5% increase, even though many other budgets in the town are being level funded year after year after year. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that number might move. We have to be a little careful. I know she has a certain percentage she has to spend on material, so it may take another conversation, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. Okay?
Thank you, Sandy. That's really important. All right. Anything else under public participation? Okay, anything under calendar? I think we're booked out for the rest of the month.
Melinda, not that it should matter too much, but just a point of order on your resignation. You said you'd be on till the 15th. I just wanted to point out, obviously you'll be done on the 8th because the 15th is the holiday and you don't have anything booked.
Yeah, I figured I would, my closing's going to happen a few days after that.
Yeah.
Then I'll no longer be a resident. And I also figured that would at least leave the week after the last meeting to take care of any business. I did email Steve concerning his budgets, as we talked about in the last meeting, and he hasn't gotten back to me, but I did tell him I was going to be transitioning out, and to, just get a hold of me sooner rather than later. I can reach out to him again just to touch base and see if he has any questions or anything for me before that, but I did want you all to know that I did reach out to him.
I actually sent him an email too. I didn't know you did that, and I told him you were leaving too, and he should probably get in touch with you.
Okay,
sooner
good.
rather than later.
I feel well pressured. That's good. Okay, good. So anything under as may arise?
The only
We need a liaison for the capital planning committee.
All right, so I heard Sandy say that we need a liaison for capital planning, which we talked about last time. So thank you, Sandy, for reminding me that we said we were gonna do that tonight. Drew, did you have something?
the only question I was going to ask is if you had any plan for an agenda for item in an upcoming meeting for the van.
For the van?
The COA van, Council on Aging.
COA.
Oh, COA van. Charlie, do we have any updates that we need
Don't
to?
know how many miles I have on that.
Well, for the when you're asking about the COA van, I'm not sure. I know that Susan is asking to get a new one, and I haven't seen an article come through yet. Sandy, have you seen one?
No, not. I'll have to check, Charlie. I thought I do remember hearing about it, but I
Right.
don't know if there's
Yeah.
been an actual article.
And,
But again,
and
that
what-
would be, I need members of the capital planning committee. I need a selectman too.
Right.
and what-
Go ahead.
and when I talked to Susan, she mentioned something about the CARES Act helping out with the van.
We already have that one.
Okay. So she's buying another one?
I know, yeah, Susan had talked to me about pricing in the sense of what, if we're going to be going after a grant or not, what the pricing would be different as opposed to just doing it, having the town.
There's some electric ones out there too. I mean, we can. I think we have enough time to. I mean, it would be nice if I can get to town meeting this year.
I think that's Susan's intent.
Okay, awesome. So we might table that then, if that's okay with you, Drew, until we actually get in the capital articles, the articles that would be under capital planning. And it sounds like what we need to do tonight is to choose someone or take a vote on someone to send to capital planning so that we can start talking about those big ticket items, or rather, so capital planning can start talking about the big ticket items and bring them to the finance committee. Does anyone have any interest in being the liaison to and serving on the capital planning committee?
I can do it.
I don't know. I've
Still got a lot to learn, but
next week.
Your interest.
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, I heard. I'm not just being sarcastic and pretending I heard someone say yes, like I do with my students to make them do something. Tom, did you say you were interested?
no, I did. I did say yes. I did say yes. I'll be leaning on Charlie again to teach me what the hell's going on, I think. But yes, and Sandy.
And yes, Sandy,
You're a good man.
please.
Good man, Tom.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Is the building committee part of capital planning?
No,
Because I have not seen any budget from him, from Steve. Have you, Sandy?
this would be Scott.
Scott, yeah, from Scott, I haven't seen anything.
We have, look on town building in the one, that folder,
Oh, the OneDrive?
the OneDrive, yeah.
We have building inspector.
Yeah,
That's
it says
tiny.
building committee and Scott Materna.
Right.
But I had not seen a budget from him. I've talked to my other.
I have an
Right.
MSBC budget.
That's
Yeah.
it. The MSBC, it's Municipal School Building Committee. I apologize, I use the old abbreviation.
Okay. I will look. Thank you.
All right.
So barring anyone else's interests, I would entertain a motion to nominate Tom Connolly to represent the Finance Committee on the Capital Planning Committee.
Second motion. I'll make that motion. Second.
Carol's just so excited. She's like second, third.
Both hands.
Yeah, 2 hands. All right, so we have a motion from Cheryl. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I will just add that I think you will be wonderful, Tom.
I do too.
Thank
In all honesty, I really think you'll be great.
Okay, thanks. See what I'm getting into.
All those in favor, I'll roll call us. Cheryl,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and myself, Melinda. Aye. Thank you so much for doing it. Okay, wonderful. Anything else under as may arise? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion for the Finance Committee to adjourn at 7:09 p.m.
I'll make a
I would
motion.
make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, I'll roll call us. Cheryl,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
and myself, Melinda. Aye. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe. Take care.
Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.